Avery Blackwood, 32, sat alone in her corner office, staring at the unopened birthday card from her mother. The family group chat had gone silent yesterday after she declined to fund her brother's fifth failed business venture. Now her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "We've all agreed it's best if you don't come to Sunday dinner anymore. Happy birthday, by the way." Avery's hand trembled as she opened her laptop. They had no idea she'd just become their company's anonymous majority shareholder. Before we dive deeper into how my entire family betrayed me on what should have been the happiest day of the year, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our family drama community. Trust me, the revenge I'm about to serve is colder than a family dinner where no one's speaking to each other. I grew up in a modest, split-level house in Milwaukee, where my parents Robert and Linda Blackwood raised 3 children with vastly different approaches. As the firstborn, I was expected to excel without praise, while my younger siblings, Dylan and Megan, received standing ovations for participation trophies. My father started Blackwood Manufacturing in our garage when I was 10, eventually growing it into a respectable local business that made specialized industrial parts. It wasn't glamorous, but it put food on our table and became the center of our family identity. From an early age, I understood that achievement was my only path to recognition. When I brought home straight A's, my mother would nod and say, "That's what we expect from you, Avery." When Dylan managed a B-, the family celebrated with ice cream. I learned to find validation elsewhere, throwing myself into academics, debate club, and business competitions, silently collecting accolades my family rarely acknowledged. When I earned a full scholarship to Wharton for business school, my father's first response was, "Who's going to help your brother with his math homework now?" My mother worried about who would babysit Megan on weekends. Neither mentioned being proud. At my graduation ceremony, they spent most of the time discussing Dylan's community college application and left before the reception to make it to Megan's soccer game. Meanwhile, I was laying the foundation for my career with single-minded determination. I secured a coveted internship at Morgan Capital Investment, working 80-hour weeks and sleeping on a futon in a shared apartment with 3 other ambitious women. I climbed from analyst to associate to manager with relentless efficiency, my family largely unaware of each promotion. When I called home, conversations revolved around Dylan's latest entrepreneurial idea or Megan's social life. My accomplishments were footnotes, if mentioned at all. When my father's business hit a rough patch during the 2018 recession, I anonymously directed a client to Blackwood Manufacturing, saving them from bankruptcy without anyone knowing. When Megan needed tuition for her fashion merchandising program, I quietly paid the balance, letting my parents believe they'd managed it themselves. When Dylan's first business, a food delivery app specifically for cheese products called Say Cheese, failed spectacularly, I covered his debts through a shell company, sparing my parents the knowledge of how deep he'd gone. None of them knew. I kept my financial success private, partly from pride, and partly because I knew acknowledging my help would change our dynamic forever. I wanted them to love me, not for my bank account. But this approach created an unsustainable pattern. By my 30th birthday, I was subsidizing family vacations, I wasn't invited to join paying medical bills they never discussed with me, and serving as the family's silent financial safety net while being treated as the distant, career-obsessed daughter who didn't prioritize family. Dylan's business failures continued. A cryptocurrency called Brothercoin, a subscription box for golf enthusiasts called Tea Time, a social media platform exclusively for twins called Double Take, and most recently an app that let people rent their lawnmowers to neighbors, unfortunately named Mau Money. Each venture followed the same pattern: enthusiastic family support, substantial investment from my parents' retirement fund, inevitable collapse, and then a period of family tension, until the next idea emerged. Through it all, I tried maintaining connections with phone calls and visits when my schedule allowed. But family gatherings increasingly felt like walking into a private club where I didn't know the membership rules. Inside jokes excluded me. Family decisions had been made without my input. Photos lined the walls from events I hadn't been invited to attend. Avery's too busy with her important job to care about family stuff became the running narrative despite evidence to the contrary. When I did attend gatherings, my suggestions were dismissed as big city thinking, my professional insights brushed off with, "That's not how we do things in the real world." The irony that my career success funded their lifestyle wasn't lost on me, but I kept my resentment behind a carefully constructed wall of professionalism. Last Christmas, I watched as my parents gifted Dylan a $5,000 check toward his lawnmower rental business, which they'd scraped together by postponing necessary home repairs. I received a scented candle and a self-help book about finding work-life balance. That night, I silently transferred enough money to their account to fix the leaking roof and replace the failing furnace, attaching a note from their insurance company about an overlooked claim. As my 32nd birthday approached, I genuinely believed things might change. I had just been promoted to Senior Investment Director at Morgan Capital, a position that came with substantial influence and a corner office overlooking Manhattan. For once, I thought my family might acknowledge my achievements with the same enthusiasm they showed when Megan got a raise at the department store, or when Dylan announced his next doomed venture. For once, I might be celebrated rather than tolerated. I couldn't have been more wrong. My birthday fell on a Friday this year, and for the first time in my adult life, I'd arranged to take the entire weekend off to fly home to Milwaukee. I'd booked a suite at my parents' favorite restaurant for Saturday night, planning to treat everyone to an elegant dinner where I would finally share news of my promotion. The reservation had been made 3 months in advance with a special cake ordered and champagne selected. I'd even arranged for Megan's boyfriend and Dylan's latest girlfriend to attend, wanting to include everyone important to my siblings. The Monday before my birthday, I received the call that would unknowingly set everything in motion. Dylan wanted to run a business idea by me, his voice brimming with that familiar enthusiasm that preceded every failed venture. "It's not like the others," he insisted, using my childhood nickname that only emerged when he wanted something. "This is a guaranteed success. I've done the research." His research consisted of a YouTube video and a Reddit thread, as I would later discover. The idea itself was a subscription service delivering customized lawn gnomes to people's homes monthly, called Gnome Sweet Gnome. He needed $75,000 for initial inventory, website development, and marketing. "I can pay you back within 6 months," he promised. "Mom and Dad are in for 20 grand, but they're a little strapped because of some repairs they did recently." The repairs I had secretly funded. I tried gentle redirection, suggesting he start smaller or develop a business plan for actual investors. I offered to review his pitch deck or connect him with a business mentor. But Dylan wasn't interested in advice, only cash. "I knew you wouldn't support me," he snapped. "You've always thought you were better than us just because you got lucky with that scholarship." "That wasn't luck, Dylan. That was years of hard work while you were skipping classes to hang out at the mall," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "There it is, classic Avery, throwing her success in everyone's face," he shouted before hanging up. I didn't hear from him again until Thursday night, when I arrived at my parents' house for what I thought would be a quiet dinner before my weekend celebration. Instead, I walked into an ambush. The entire family sat in the living room, expressions ranging from disappointment to outright hostility. My father held a printed business plan for Gnome Sweet Gnome. My mother clutched tissues, eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying. Megan and Dylan flanked them like sentries. "We need to talk about how you treat family," my father began without preamble. For the next hour, I endured a coordinated attack on my character, my priorities, and my commitment to family. Dylan characterized my unwillingness to invest as a personal betrayal. My mother cried about how I'd changed since moving to New York. Megan suggested I was traumatizing Dylan by not believing in him. My father claimed I'd forgotten where I came from. Not once did anyone mention my birthday, my promotion, or the dinner reservation for the following evening. We've all made sacrifices for each other, my father said, conveniently forgetting that their sacrifices for Dylan's businesses had been secretly subsidized by me for years. That's what families do. I've made sacrifices too, I countered, fighting to keep my voice steady. I've worked extremely hard to build my career. Yes, your precious career, Megan rolled her eyes. We know that matters more than we do. That's not fair, I said, feeling control slipping away as years of unacknowledged resentment bubbled to the surface. My career has, I stopped myself from saying, supported all of you. Your career has what Dylan pressed. Made you too important for family, given you the right to look down on my dreams. I don't look down on your dreams, I said carefully. I just think you need a more sustainable approach. You've had 4 failed businesses in 3 years and see Dylan turn to our parents. She's keeping score. That's not what family does. I'm trying to protect you, I insisted, but the words fell on deaf ears. If you wanted to protect this family, my father said gravely, you'd help your brother succeed instead of watching him struggle. I left without resolving anything, retreating to my hotel room rather than staying in my childhood bedroom as planned. At 1:58 p.m., 2 minutes before my actual birthday, the family group chat that had been silent since my arrival exploded with activity about Dylan's business launch with no mention of my birthday. I waited until midnight. No messages. No calls. At 8:15 the next morning, my sister's text arrived. We've all agreed it's best if you don't come to Sunday dinner anymore. Happy birthday, by the way. Minutes later, my mother's birthday card arrived by email, a generic e-card with no personal message, clearly sent as an afterthought. By noon, I'd seen Instagram stories from my entire family at a local diner, celebrating what the caption called a special family breakfast, from which I'd been deliberately excluded. The final blow came at 7:30 p.m., when the restaurant called to ask if I still wanted them to hold my reservation since no one had arrived. I canceled the booking, the cake, the champagne, and my return flight scheduled for Monday. Instead, I took the next available plane back to New York, landing at 11 p.m. and going straight to my office, where I knew no one would look for me, and no one would witness my breakdown. That's where I sat alone on my 32nd birthday, staring at my mother's unopened e-card and my sister's dismissive text. That's when my phone rang with the call that would change everything. Avery, sorry to bother you on your birthday weekend, said Victor Zhao, head of acquisitions at Morgan Capital. He didn't wait for me to explain why I was back in New York ahead of schedule. Something's come across my desk that might interest you given your background in manufacturing. Are you familiar with a company called Blackwood Manufacturing in Wisconsin? My heart stopped. Yes, I managed. What about it? Midwest Holdings is looking to acquire them. They're struggling but have a solid customer base and proprietary designs worth salvaging. The current owner has health issues and wants to exit but is concerned about his employees. Would you be willing to review the proposal? I agreed automatically, my mind racing. After Victor hung up, I pulled up everything in our database on Blackwood Manufacturing. The picture was worse than I'd imagined. My father hadn't just been struggling, the company was 3 months from bankruptcy. The health issues Victor mentioned were stress-induced cardiac episodes my family had never disclosed to me. The proposed acquisition was fair, but would gradually phase out local operations, consolidating production at Midwest's Ohio facilities. Most of Blackwood's 58 employees, many of whom I'd known since childhood, would eventually lose their jobs. My father would get enough to retire comfortably, but his life's work would effectively disappear. I stayed in my office all night, reviewing the files until my eyes burned. By dawn, I'd formulated a plan that was either brilliant or the most self-destructive thing I'd ever contemplated. Morgan Capital's ethical guidelines strictly prohibited personal involvement in client acquisitions. But technically, I wasn't personally involved. I had no official connection to Blackwood Manufacturing. I was simply the daughter of the owner reviewing a potential investment like any other. And if I happened to use my personal funds to create a holding company that would make a competing offer, well, that was just good business. I called our legal department at 7 a.m. speaking to a bleary-eyed junior associate about hypothetical scenarios involving anonymous investors. By 9 a.m., I'd created Corvus Holdings, named after the scientific classification for blackbirds, a private investment vehicle funded entirely with my own money. By noon, I'd drafted a competing acquisition offer that would keep manufacturing in Milwaukee while modernizing operations. The ethical gymnastics made me dizzy. Was I doing this to save my father's company and its employees, or was I orchestrating an elaborate revenge scheme against a family that had just cut me off? Perhaps both motives could coexist, I reasoned as I prepared for the most important presentation of my career. 3 days later, I sat anonymously among Morgan Capital's clients as Victor presented both acquisition options to Blackwood Manufacturing's board, which consisted of my father, our family attorney, and the company's longtime production manager. My father looked terrible, gray-faced and thinner than I'd seen him at dinner the previous week. The Midwest Holdings offer provides immediate liquidity and a 3-year consulting contract for Mr. Blackwood, Victor explained. The Corvus Holdings offer retains local operations but requires more active management oversight during transition. My father rubbed his temples. And who exactly is Corvus Holdings? I've never heard of them. A private investor who wishes to remain anonymous for now, Victor replied smoothly as we'd rehearsed. They have particular interest in preserving manufacturing in Milwaukee. Sounds suspicious, my father muttered. What's the catch? No catch, Victor said. Both offers are financially equivalent. Corvus simply has different priorities regarding operations. After hours of discussion, the board voted unanimously to accept the Corvus offer primarily to protect local jobs. My father signed the preliminary paperwork with a shaking hand, unaware he was entering into business with his estranged daughter. The acquisition moved quickly. Through proxies and attorneys, I implemented immediate changes, improved benefits for long-term employees, technology upgrades I knew the company desperately needed, and a management restructuring that reduced my father's responsibilities while maintaining his title and salary. I monitored these changes from New York, watching company reports and financial statements like a hawk. Under the terms of the deal, the current management would continue day-to-day operations with oversight from Corvus representatives, actually consultants I'd hired, who reported directly to me. Each night I questioned my motivations. Was I helping my family despite their rejection? Was I controlling them from afar? Was I proving my worth in the only language they seemed to understand, money and business success? Or was I simply unable to let go of a connection that, however painful, remained fundamental to my identity? The answer was as complex as the financial structure I'd created to hide my involvement. I was rescuing my father's legacy while setting the stage for a revelation that would force my family to recognize what they'd thrown away. I was being both magnanimous and manipulative, protective and punitive. 2 months after my birthday betrayal, I sat in a board meeting where my father's company reported its first profitable quarter in 2 years. The proxies praised the remarkable turnaround, while my father accepted congratulations with bewildered gratitude, utterly unaware that his alienated daughter was orchestrating everything from the shadows. As the meeting concluded, one of my consultants asked the question I'd been waiting for. Mr. Blackwood, the majority shareholder, would like to schedule a personal meeting at the quarterly review. Would you be available? My father agreed, obviously anxious about finally meeting his mysterious benefactor. He had no idea he'd been living in a reality of my design, or that in exactly 1 month I would step out of the shadows and into the power position he'd never believed I could achieve. The stage was set. The pieces were in motion. Now all I had to do was wait for my family to feel the full weight of their dependence on someone they'd discarded, without a second thought. 3 months after my birthday, I maintained my self-imposed exile from family contact. No calls, no texts, no emails, though I monitored their social media with clinical detachment. Through company reports and my network of proxies, I tracked my family's activities with the same precision I applied to investment portfolios. The picture wasn't pretty. Despite the acquisition saving Blackwood Manufacturing, my parents' personal finances continued deteriorating. My father, accustomed to tapping company resources for family expenses, found himself constrained by new corporate policies I'd implemented through my proxies, proper accounting practices that prevented the commingling of business and personal funds. My brother's Gnome Sweet Gnome venture collapsed spectacularly within 6 weeks. Without my investment, he'd scrambled for alternative funding, eventually convincing 3 friends to contribute their savings. When the shipment of 500 gnomes arrived from an overseas manufacturer, they discovered what an actual business plan might have revealed. The products were shoddily made, some borderline offensive in design, and the shipping costs alone exceeded their entire budget. Dylan was now facing small claims court filings from his angry investors and had moved back into my parents' basement. Megan, always quick to cast judgment while contributing little, had transformed her Instagram into a self-righteous chronicle of family loyalty. Some people choose career over blood, she posted, the week after my birthday alongside a selfie with my parents. True family sticks together through everything. Her posts gradually shifted from celebration to concern as the family's situation worsened, though she never acknowledged my absence directly. My father's health deteriorated further. The consultant I'd placed as his assistant reported he often looked exhausted, took frequent breaks, and once had to sit down during a factory floor inspection, something the proudly stoic Robert Blackwood would never have done. Previously, my mother began selling her prized antique collection piece by piece on eBay, items she'd collected throughout their marriage, each with sentimental value she'd enthusiastically explained during my childhood visits to antique shops. I watched through dispassionate digital surveillance as family heirlooms disappeared to cover basic expenses. The corporate policies I'd implemented through Corvus Holdings created a strange paradox. The company was healthier than ever, with improved efficiency, working conditions, and future prospects, but my family's personal situation grew increasingly desperate as their financial mismanagement caught up with them without my secret bailouts. In early May, I accessed security footage from the factory to watch my father host a family dinner in his office, after hours a gathering I would once have been invited to attend. Through the soundless video, I observed their tense expressions and agitated gestures. My father repeatedly pointed to company documents. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Dylan paced and gesticulated wildly. Megan sat with arms crossed, periodically checking her phone. I didn't need audio to understand the scene. They were discussing money, and they didn't have enough. That night I almost broke my silence, my finger hovering over my father's contact information for nearly an hour before I set the phone aside. The plan required commitment. Emotional weakness now would undermine everything. 2 weeks later, I received the report I'd been waiting for. My father had inquired about getting an advance on his salary and been gently refused based on the policies I'd established. He'd then asked about the possibility of a dividend payment to shareholders and been informed that such decisions required majority shareholder approval, which meant going through Corvus Holdings. The company would be fine. My restructuring had ensured that. But my family was approaching a financial breaking point without me as their safety net. The quarterly shareholder meeting was 2 weeks away. I had to decide: continue the pressure until they broke completely, or reveal myself and offer redemption. My decision crystallized during an emergency management meeting called after my father experienced chest pains at work. The company doctor, a position I'd created and funded, advised him to rest and seek cardiac care. As I watched the meeting unfold through secure video conferencing disguised as a routine investor update, I saw genuine concern from employees my father had worked alongside for decades. "Bob's given everything to this place," said Hank Garner, the production manager who'd started as my father's first employee 30 years earlier. "We need to make sure he takes care of himself now." The humanity in that simple statement pierced the armor of resentment I'd built around myself. My father had flaws, profound ones, but he'd created something that mattered to this community. The company employed people who depended on its survival. My revenge, however justified, it felt risked collateral damage I hadn't fully considered. That night alone in my apartment, overlooking a city that never slept, but somehow always felt lonely, I experienced my first genuine emotional breakdown since my birthday. For hours I sobbed without restraint, grieving the family relationship I'd wanted, the recognition I'd never received, and the tangled web of love, resentment, and manipulation I'd created. Was I becoming the villain in my own story? Was my pursuit of justice actually petty revenge? Were my actions healing anything, or just causing more pain? The questions circled like vultures, offering no resolution. By morning, puffy-eyed and exhausted, I reached a decision. I would attend the quarterly meeting as planned, and reveal myself as the majority shareholder. But instead of the triumphant humiliation I'd originally imagined, I would offer a path forward conditional on honesty and changed behavior. The revelation would shock them, yes. The power dynamic would shift permanently, unavoidably. But perhaps from the ashes of our old dysfunctional relationship, something healthier might emerge. Not the unconditional love and acceptance I'd craved as a child, but something more mature and balanced, mutual respect between adults who shared history and blood, if not always understanding. I know you're probably wondering if I'm taking this revenge too far, or if my family deserves everything coming to them. I've been questioning this myself every night. If you've ever had to choose between forgiveness and justice, let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this roller coaster of family drama, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this all unfolds. Stay with me, the moment when they finally realize who's really in control is coming up next. The quarterly shareholder meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the company's main conference room. I arrived at 9:30, entering through a side door arranged by my assistant to avoid premature detection. From a small adjoining office, I watched through one-way glass as people filed in the management team, looking nervous but optimistic with their positive quarterly reports. The company attorney shuffling papers with practiced efficiency. And finally, my family. My father entered first, moving with the cautious gait of someone unwilling to acknowledge physical weakness. My mother followed, her hand resting protectively on his back, worry etched deeply around her eyes. To my surprise, both Dylan and Megan trailed behind them, Dylan in an ill-fitting suit obviously borrowed from our father, and Megan in the conservative black dress she reserved for occasions requiring actual professionalism rather than Instagram-ready style. They had no business reason to attend a shareholder meeting, which confirmed my suspicion they expected to finally meet and presumably charm the mysterious investor who held their financial future in hand. The family that had cut me off on my birthday had assembled to court favor with the unknown benefactor who could solve their problems. At precisely 10 a.m., Victor Zhao began the meeting with standard procedural matters. I listened to positive reports about production improvements, employee retention, and financial projections, all results of changes I'd implemented. My father accepted compliments with bewildered gratitude, clearly uncertain why his struggling company had suddenly turned around under new ownership. And now Victor announced, after the regular business concluded, "I believe we've all been looking forward to meeting the representative from Corvus Holdings, our majority shareholder." The room fell silent. My father straightened his tie. My mother clasped her hands tightly in her lap. Dylan attempted a confident smile that came across as a grimace. Megan subtly checked her reflection in her phone camera. I took a deep breath, opened the connecting door, and walked into the conference room. The sequence of expressions that crossed my family's faces would have been comical under different circumstances: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally dawning horror as understanding took hold. Avery. My father half rose from his chair, his face draining of color so rapidly I feared another cardiac episode. "Hello, Dad," I said calmly, taking the empty chair at the head of the table. "Mom." "Dylan." "Megan. It's been a while." "What are you doing here?" Megan blurted, looking frantically between me and Victor. "This is a shareholders' meeting." "Yes," I agreed. "That's why I'm here." "You work for Corvus Holdings?" my father asked, still not comprehending the full situation. "Not exactly," I said, nodding to Victor, who distributed folders to everyone present. "I am Corvus Holdings." The silence that followed was absolute. My family stared at the documents before them, clear evidence of my ownership, the corporate structure I'd created, and the extent of my control over Blackwood Manufacturing. My father's hand trembled as he turned pages, seeing his company's fate laid out in precise legal language. My mother found her voice first. "This is impossible. You couldn't afford to buy a company." I raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I could. I'm the senior investment director at one of the largest capital firms in the country. I've been quite successful." "But," she faltered, "you never said anything about this kind of money." "You never asked," I replied simply. "You were always too busy celebrating Dylan's latest business idea, or Megan's Instagram followers." Dylan's face flushed with anger. "So this whole time you've been spying on us, controlling Dad's company from the shadows? Is this some sick revenge because we didn't throw you a big enough birthday party?" I remained outwardly calm despite the heat rising in my chest. "This isn't about my birthday specifically, though. The timing is ironic. This is about years of being treated as an outsider in my own family. It's about watching Dad's company heading for bankruptcy, and doing something to save it, and the 58 families that depend on it for their livelihood." "We would have been fine without your interference," my father said stiffly, though the financial reports in front of him clearly showed otherwise. "Would you?" I asked, sliding another document across the table. "This is the loan application that was rejected by 3 banks before I stepped in. This is the cardiac specialist report you never told me about. And these," I continued, presenting printed screenshots, "are the text messages where you all decided I wasn't worth including in the family anymore. All on the same day I saved your company." My mother began to cry silently. Megan stared at her lap. Dylan looked like he might be sick. "After the meeting, my office," I said, standing abruptly. "We have family business to discuss. But first we have company business to complete." For the next hour, I led the meeting with professional detachment, outlining my vision for Blackwood Manufacturing's future: expanded product lines, improved employee benefits, and sustainable growth targets. The management team responded with enthusiasm, clearly relieved by the company's positive trajectory, regardless of the family drama unfolding before them. When the meeting concluded, the room cleared quickly, leaving only my family sitting in stunned silence. I closed the door behind the last departing manager. 3 months ago, I began pacing slowly around the table. "You all made it very clear that I wasn't welcome in this family unless I was willing to fund Dylan's business failures without question. What you didn't know was how much I'd already been supporting all of you." I detailed every financial intervention I'd made over the years: the anonymous client I directed to the company during the recession, the tuition payments, the debt coverage, the home repairs, disguised as insurance claims. "You've been," my father struggled for words, "manipulating us, playing some kind of god with our lives." "I've been protecting you," I corrected, while desperately hoping someone might notice my achievements or contributions. But that never happened. Instead, I got this. I held up my phone, displaying my sister's birthday text. "We were upset," my mother offered weakly. You've always been so separate from us. By your design, not mine, I replied. But that's not important now. What matters is where we go from here. The awkwardness of the Sunday dinner invitation couldn't have been more palpable. My mother called 3 days after the shareholder meeting, her voice unnaturally bright as she suggested I rejoin our family tradition. We've missed you, she said, though we both knew the invitation stemmed from necessity rather than genuine longing for my company. I accepted, with conditions I'll be there, but we need to talk honestly about everything. No pretending the past didn't happen. When I arrived at my parents' house that Sunday, the atmosphere was thick with tension beneath a veneer of forced normalcy. The dining table was set with the good china, usually reserved for holidays. My father greeted me with a stiff handshake instead of his usual dismissive nod. My mother had prepared all my childhood favorites, suddenly remembered after years of serving what Dylan and Megan preferred. Avery, perfect timing, Dylan exclaimed, with newfound enthusiasm as I entered. He'd traded his usual sloppy attire for a button-down shirt and had actually combed his hair. I was just telling Mom and Dad about some business ideas I wanted to run by you. I think with your expertise and my creativity, we could build something amazing together. The same brother who had called me elitist for questioning his Gnome subscription service now pitched me partnership opportunities over appetizers, his eyes occasionally darting to my designer watch and the car keys to my Audi that I placed on the side table. Megan's transformation was equally transparent. Her Instagram now featured throwback photos of us as children, with captions about reconnecting with my amazing sister and family is everything. At dinner, she sat beside me, showing excessive interest in my work and life in New York. You should totally let me visit your office sometime, she gushed. I could help you pick out some decor that would look amazing on your social media. My extended family, previously content to follow my parents' lead in minimizing my achievements, suddenly found reasons to contact me. Aunt Patricia, who had forgotten my birthday for the past decade, sent a gourmet gift basket to my apartment. Cousin Jeremy, who had once mockingly called me Miss Wall Street at a family reunion, reached out about career advice for his son. Their insincerity was exhausting, but not surprising. I observed their performance with clinical detachment, waiting for the right moment to address the elephant trampling through the room. That moment came when my father proposed a toast to family reunited over dessert. Are we, I asked, setting down my glass untouched, reunited? Or are you all just terrified of what happens if the person signing your checks walks away again? The room fell silent. My mother's smile froze. Dylan suddenly found his napkin fascinating. That's not fair, Avery, my father said, though his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I countered. 3 months ago you all decided I wasn't family anymore because I wouldn't fund Dylan's business. Now that you know I control the company, I'm suddenly the favorite daughter. I'm not stupid. We made a mistake, my mother offered weakly. We were upset. You've been upset with me my entire life, I replied. The difference is now you need something from me. The facade cracked. Accusations flew. Old resentments surfaced. My father shouted about manipulation and deception. My mother cried about family loyalty. Dylan complained about unfair advantages. Megan stormed out, only to return minutes later, unwilling to miss the drama. When the initial explosion subsided, I made my position clear. If you want a genuine relationship with me and genuine support, we need professional help sorting through decades of dysfunction. I've scheduled a family therapy session for next Saturday. Attendance is mandatory if you want me in your lives going forward. My father balked initially. Blackwoods don't need shrinks to tell us how to be a family. How's that working out so far? I asked simply. The therapy session was excruciating for everyone. Dr. Melissa Chen, a family systems specialist, created a space where honesty couldn't be avoided. For 4 hours we unpacked years of favoritism, resentment, unacknowledged contributions, and missed connections. I spoke of childhood moments when I desperately needed recognition that never came. When I won the state business competition in 10th grade, you didn't come because Dylan had a regular season baseball game the same day. My father defended himself initially. Dylan needed support with his confidence. You were always so self-sufficient. I wasn't, I said quietly. I just learned not to ask for what I'd never receive. My mother wept as she acknowledged unconscious patterns. We did put more energy into your siblings. You seemed so capable, and they needed more. But that wasn't fair to you. Dylan's perspective surprised me most. You were the standard I could never live up to, he admitted. Dad always compared me to you. Why can't you be focused like your sister, but then would undermine you to make me feel better? It was confusing. Megan, the youngest, had her own revelations. I grew up watching everyone else get attention, Dylan for failing and needing help, you for achieving and being resented for it. I learned to be loud and dramatic just to be seen at all. Dr. Chen guided us through painful truths toward tentative understanding. My parents reluctantly acknowledged the favoritism that had shaped our family dynamics. My siblings recognized their role in perpetuating unhealthy patterns. And I confronted my own contribution, how my secret financial support had enabled dysfunction, while my resentment festered beneath a veneer of success. Financial control can be another form of unhealthy engagement, Dr. Chen noted gently. You've been trying to buy the recognition you deserved freely. The observation stung because it contained truth I hadn't wanted to face. We left that first session emotionally drained, but with homework, specific communication exercises, and boundaries to practice. My father, most resistant, initially surprised me by scheduling our next appointment before we left. I don't want to lose my daughter again, he said gruffly, the closest he'd come to acknowledging the pain he'd caused. Over the following weeks, our interactions remained awkward but grew incrementally more authentic. The performative enthusiasm gave way to cautious honesty. My parents invited me to Sunday dinner without prompting from catastrophe. Dylan asked for business advice rather than handouts. Megan shared genuine insecurities about her future, instead of cultivating her Instagram persona. We backslid often. Old patterns reasserted themselves in moments of stress. My father still occasionally resented my authority in his company. My mother still sometimes enabled Dylan's irresponsibility. Old hurts were referenced in heated moments. But something fundamental had shifted. The family that had discarded me on my birthday was learning painfully and imperfectly to build a new relationship with the daughter they'd never truly known, and the woman who now held significant influence over their futures. 6 months after the shareholder meeting revelation, my family gathered again, this time for Thanksgiving at my parents' home. The difference from previous family gatherings was subtle but profound. The nervous performance of our early reconciliation attempts had given way to something more genuine if still evolving. My father, looking healthier after following his doctor's recommendations and reducing his workload, carved the turkey with steady hands. My mother had prepared the meal with help from all of us, abandoning her usual martyrdom in the kitchen. Dylan discussed his community college business courses with genuine enthusiasm, rather than schemes for quick success. Megan had decreased her social media posting by 60%, focusing instead on an entry-level marketing position at a local company, a job she'd secured without family connections. I had arrived the previous day to help with preparations, staying in my childhood bedroom that no longer felt like a museum exhibit of a life I'd left behind. The bookshelves still held my debate trophies and economics textbooks, but family photos had been added, recent ones, where I was present and centered, rather than an afterthought. I've been thinking about my shares in the company, I said, as we settled in the living room after dinner, introducing the topic that had hovered unspoken throughout the gathering. My father tensed visibly. Despite months of therapy and gradual relationship, rebuilding ownership of Blackwood Manufacturing remained a sensitive subject. I've decided to restructure the holdings. I continued, passing out folders, similar to those I'd presented at the shareholder meeting months earlier. Dad will resume majority control of daily operations as president. I'll retain enough shares to maintain board influence, but transfer 30% ownership to a trust benefiting current and future employees. The proposal detailed a compromise between my father's desire to reclaim his company and my insistence on modern management practices. He would lead with greater transparency and accountability. I would step back from direct control while ensuring the business remained financially sound. "You're giving back the company?" my father asked, bewildered. "Not exactly," I clarified. "I'm establishing a partnership based on mutual respect rather than secret manipulation or overt control. The company doesn't belong to either of us alone, it belongs to the people who've built it, including long-term employees." My father studied the documents, emotion working across his face. "This is more than fair," he finally said, extending his hand formally before pulling me into an awkward but genuine hug, the first in years. That wasn't a perfunctory greeting or farewell. Dylan, who had been working part-time in the shipping department to learn the business from the ground up, reviewed his portion of the agreement. "Assistant operations manager?" he questioned, looking up in surprise. "You think I'm ready for that?" "Your professor thinks so," I replied. "I spoke with her about your progress. You've actually been doing the work, Dylan. That deserves recognition." He blinked rapidly, unused to praise, tied to genuine achievement rather than familial obligation. "I won't let you down." "This isn't about me," I reminded him. "It's about your own potential finally being realized." Megan, less directly involved with the company but included in our healing process, asked the question I'd been expecting. "Will you move back to Milwaukee now?" "No," I said firmly. "My life is in New York. But I've arranged to work remotely 1 week each month." And I added with a small smile, "I've set aside funds for regular family visits in both directions." My mother, who had remained silent during the business discussion, finally spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about why we treated you the way we did for so many years," she said quietly. "I think we were intimidated by you even when you were young. Your focus, your intelligence, it made us feel inadequate, so we focused on the children who made us feel needed and competent instead." Her honesty, painful as it was, represented genuine progress. 6 months earlier she would have denied any favoritism had occurred at all. "I'm not saying it was right," she continued. "Just that I understand it better now. And I'm sorry, Avery. Truly sorry." The words I'd waited decades to hear carried both healing and sorrow. Acknowledgement came too late to reclaim lost years, but perhaps in time to build something new. As the evening concluded, we stood together for a family photo, not for social media or appearances, but for ourselves. The image captured something tentative yet genuine, a family in repair rather than performance mode. Later, after everyone else had retired for the evening, my father found me on the back porch, gazing at the stars visible in suburban Milwaukee that remained hidden in New York's light pollution. "You could have destroyed us," he said without preamble. "When you revealed yourself at that meeting, you had every right to ruin me after how we treated you." "That was never my goal," I replied honestly. "Even at my angriest, I wanted recognition, not destruction." He nodded slowly. "I've spent my life building things. That company. This family. But I nearly destroyed both through pride and favoritism." He cleared his throat awkwardly. "I'm trying to learn how to build differently now. Better." The admission, incomplete but sincere, represented a breakthrough. We stood in companionable silence, watching our breath form clouds in the November air. "I'm proud of you, Avery," he said finally. "I should have said that years ago. I'm saying it now." Simple words desperately needed and belatedly offered. Not enough to erase the past, but perhaps sufficient to begin a different future. The family that had cut me off on my birthday was learning slowly and imperfectly how to embrace the daughter they'd never fully seen. The power dynamic had changed permanently. I would never again be the outsider desperate for approval, but something healthier was emerging from the ruins of our former relationship. This journey from betrayal to understanding has taught me that family karma always comes full circle. Has anyone in your life ever underestimated you, only to realize your true value when it was almost too late? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story of family redemption resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to my channel for more real-life drama, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that justice eventually finds its way. Thank you for being part of my extended family here. Remember that sometimes the best revenge isn't cutting people off, it's cutting them back in on your own terms.